Welcome to our first whiteboard walkthrough. This is anatomy, and we are going to be covering the axillary artery branches in this video. All right, I thought I'd come on here, do a little quick drawing out something that's not a nerve, since I've been focusing a lot on nerves lately, because all my videos are on the brachial plexus. Yes, I'm obsessed. But I thought I would come on here and actually do like an artery video so you can see how drawing stuff out actually works for not just nerves. And this is an example of sort of the blank sheet method. So I got nothing on here. You don't have to have paper. You could use an iPad. You could use a whiteboard. You could use your wall. I don't know. So we're going to draw out the axillary artery branches. And as we do it, I'm going to teach, obviously. But as we do it, I'm actually going to show you the most important part is not actually being able to draw the branches. Like, you just need to draw arrows to draw the branches, to be honest. I'll do a version of that at the end. But what you need to do when you draw out arteries is actually connect them to something. And I'll show you what I mean instead of just talk at the camera. So, axillary artery. Well, it's called the axillary artery, so it's going to exist in the axilla. What is the axilla? The axilla is the anatomical armpit. So it's your armpit. This is your axilla. And it has a lot more boundaries. I'm not going to do a whole axilla lecture right now. But essentially for us, it's going to be in between the clavicle, which I can grab my clavicle, and like the bump of our shoulder, okay? So there's going to be an artery running from this clavicle because there was an artery called the subclavian artery, the one that's under subclavicle, that's then going out into the upper limb. That little branch in between, subclavian, changes name, becomes axillary artery. And it looks like this through the axilla. So we'll call this clavicle, and first rib is also right here somewhere. Whee! And that's kind of the apex of our axilla. Then our axillary artery comes in here, and when it leaves, we've really entered the upper limb. Those are our boundaries. In between those boundaries, axillary artery. Where did it come from? Where did it go? It used to be the subclavian. It's becoming the brachial when it gets out of the axilla, which is this space that we're in now. I'm actually going to erase this so we have enough space. We are in our axilla. We'll talk about where this came from in a shorter other video. So, we're looking at our axillary artery. It's got 3 parts. This thing I just drew is really the reason there's a boundary at all. That's pec minor. Pec minor is going to divide your artery. Now, before I move on, because I can't help myself, this is so fake. It's there for sure, and you can use that as a boundary in your lecture questions. In reality, a lot of your branches are going to poke around the sides of this and not going to be right underneath it, even though the classic way to describe this is the first portion, second portion, third portion of your axillary artery, even though the pec minors are different shapes in every single individual, so it's not going to be as perfect as this picture, but use that as a guide. This is what they're going to tell you in lecture. Now the convenient part. My favorite part. The first portion of your axillary artery, which is the portion between the clavicle and the superior-medial border, the upper border of your pec minor, is going to be the first portion. It has 1 branch. First portion, 1 branch. Second portion, deep to the pec minor. Second portion, 2 branches. This almost seems too convenient, and it should, because it's kind of a lie. Third portion, 3 branches. And now we're going to talk about each one. So, first portion, second portion, third portion, 1 branch, 2 branches, 3 branches. But it's kind of a lie. Okay, first portion, 1 branch. Comes from above and goes down. Small branch. When you dissect, usually you cut it so you don't see it. Don't spend all your time looking for it. You know, the best way to look for it is actually not to look for the pec minor and find your parts. The best way to look for this branch is actually to look for what it's going to. You know it's going somewhere. It's named for what it's going to. They don't have to be accurate. They just have to represent the thing that you know it's supposed to go to. So these two boxes are representing my intercostal muscles. Inter means between. Costal means rib. So it's the muscles in between your ribs. Intercostal muscles. You haven't learned them yet maybe, but that's where this artery goes. It comes from above down towards the first, second, and third rib space. Rib space really means intercostal muscles in between your ribs. So this artery is called superior thoracic artery because it comes from superior towards the thorax. First and second rib space. Label everything when you're first starting. Now I know, I'll use this as an example. I'll keep probably using these as examples. Now I know that if I see an artery, any artery, I don't even care how many you see. If you see 30 arteries, which would be absurd, 30 arteries going to the first and second rib space from the axillary artery, that's a superior thoracic artery. It's the most superior thoracic arteries in the world. However, it's still a superior thoracic artery because the biggest lesson of today is it doesn't matter where it came from. It matters where it went. It's pretty deep. So any artery I see going to this space, superior thoracic artery. Next part, second portion. Okay, second portion, 2 branches. False, but we'll talk about why. Second portion, one of those branches, just like superior thoracic, is going to go down and towards the thorax, but it comes from a little more lateral, and it would come beneath the pec minor. I'm just going to draw it over. We don't care where it came from though. If it came from up here and still went to this spot, it's still this artery. The important thing is, what did it go to? It went to a muscle with serrated edges on the lateral side of your rib cage. Yes, you are correct. It went to the serratus anterior. The lateral thoracic artery supplies the serratus anterior. Lateral thoracic artery, serratus anterior muscle. That relationship is all you need to know. Because if you see an artery going to the serratus anterior, it's the lateral thoracic. I don't care if it came off of a different artery branch that we're going to talk about later, which it often does. The thoracodorsal artery, this one usually is combined with it and it splits apart, but we don't care because no matter what, you can trace it to where it's supposed to go, then you know what it is. You don't have to think any more than that. Don't make this more complicated than it is. Trust where they go. Okay, the first lie comes now. This is a trunk. The second branch is actually a trunk. And what a trunk means, just like the trunk of a tree, is that it's going to branch some more. So technically, yes, there's only 2 branches off of the second portion. But that second branch has 4 branches. So it's kind of a lie. So let's draw the tree. Second branch. Big ass tree. Thoracoacromial trunk. Thoracoacromial trunk. Think about the words. Thorax acromion trunk, meaning it has multiple branches. So, thoracoacromial trunk has 4 branches. We're going to call them C, A, D, P. And this is not mine. This is from a student of mine made this up. You can use an acronym for this. It's very helpful. Cadavers are dead people. Or some people like California, CA, Police Department, whatever floats your boat. Or make up your own, which is way better because then you'll actually remember it. This is for clavicular towards the clavicle, acromion towards the acromion, deltoid towards the anterior deltoid, pectoral to the pec muscles, both minor and major, which is going to be out this way. Can't drop that one. So thoracoacromial trunk, 4 branches, CAPD, cadavers are dead people, and clavicular, acromion, deltoid, pectoral. They tell you where they go. If I were first learning this, I would draw a little deltoid. I would draw a little acromion. I would draw a little clavicle, which we already kind of have in here. And I would draw my pec. So I remember those go to these places. Now pause. Let's take a trip to lab for a minute. Deltoid. Maybe I can see it. Probably not. It's very small. There's a much larger artery. It goes to the posterior deltoid that we care a lot more about. Acromion. That's a bone. Part of a bone. Part of the scapula. But it's deep. Really, really deep. Do you think on lab practical day I want to dig to the bone and destroy all the beautiful muscles that are there? No. Clavicular. What did you have to do to get into this area and see this artery, which also has all that brachial plexus stuff on top of it? You had to skin, and this is very, very small, and goes to our subclavius muscle. That's why it's going. It's going to go supply the subclavius, which is under the clavicle, which is very hard to see, which some of you had to cut to get in here. So hopefully you're catching my drift. That one might be gone. The only one that's still probably around and taggable, pectoral. And you can trace that one from the pecs. So all I do is I lift up my pectoralis minor or I lift up my pectoralis major and I look underneath and I find the artery, because I know arteries are squiggly and nerves are very straight, and then I trace it back, because that is the best way to find the thoracoacromial trunk. All you really need to do is find the pectoral branch, and then you can trace back and find your thoracoacromial trunk. It's not that hard to find. You just have to look for your pecs. Your pec major is pretty large. Flip it up, check the back, trace it down. You've got this. Second portion done. Third portion, 3 branches, also a lie. Less of a lie, but also a lie. So we're going to attack that first lie first. Big honkin' branch goes down. Notice how the thoracoacromial trunk went up. If you're drawing this with just arrows, just draw an arrow up, because it's important the direction they go so you can remember on test day, and you've drawn it in the actual direction they run. Your brain is better at seeing it in the body if you drew it correctly at home. So this one goes down and gives off a kind of looping branch that disappears very quickly, and the other branch keeps going down. This other branch is the one I talked about sometimes being combined with lateral thoracic artery. That happens actually a lot. But we know and love this branch. We've been talking about this branch for day one. This goes to the latissimus dorsi muscle. You know it. You love it. This is the thoracodorsal artery. This is where it comes from. And it runs with the thoracodorsal nerve to the latissimus dorsi muscle to supply it. This thing, however, that broke off and sort of ducked behind something, now I'll put that something in the picture. That'll do. Hopefully you know that's a scapula. And this is the lateral border of that scapula. And this artery just ducked to dive to the posterior surface behind the scapula. This artery is going around something. So we call that circumflexing in anatomy. So this branch is the circumflex scapular artery, because it's going to go around the scapula to the backside to run in between the 2 teres muscles in what they love to call that triangular space, which is just the space in between your 2 teres muscles where you can see this little artery for a little minute. In that triangular space. Just pull your 2 teres muscles apart. Teres minor, teres major, look in between them. I guarantee if you see an artery in there, it's the circumflex scapular artery. I don't like the spaces. That's going to come across. It's because they're fake. That's why. They help you use them, but I think they're fake. Anyway, so circumflex scapular artery going to the backside of the scapula. I never told you what this actually is. This trunk, this is a trunk, is called subscapular trunk. So that big branch that goes down is called the subscapular trunk. It gives off the circumflex scapular and the thoracodorsal artery. And I guarantee it also gives off branches to your subscapularis muscle, which is going to sit on the anterior fossa, so the anterior shallow indent of your scapula. That's where you find your subscapularis muscle, your anterior shoulder muscle. It's going to have some blood vessels from subscapular trunk. Guaranteed. We just don't always name them, and we don't always talk about them, because these are our 2 main branches we usually talk about. Last two of our third portion. Remember I said, draw things in the direction they really go. So in here, our scapula is like all up in this biz, because there's an acromial branch. This one goes around the lateral edge of the scapula. So it's really all up in here. And out here is going to be where our humerus is in our upper limb. So these two branches are actually headed lateral towards the humerus. One of them is thick, and the other is thin. But they are both headed laterally towards the humerus. If you're in lab, grab that axillary artery, pull it medially, look for two branches headed out laterally towards the inferior portion of this artery. You will find these branches guaranteed 100% of the time. These ones we've talked about in other videos. This is the posterior circumflex humeral artery, and this is the anterior circumflex humeral artery. Anterior circumflex humeral artery, posterior circumflex humeral artery. And they quite literally are going to circumflex, go around the humerus, and they're actually going to connect to one another. So I'm going to draw a very rough humerus. This is the anterior humerus. Let's pretend it's not so ugly, but it doesn't matter because it just has to look-ish like what you're trying to draw. So this one is the posterior. It's going to go behind it. So posterior circumflex humeral artery goes behind what part of the humerus? The surgical neck of the humerus. Who is it with? The axillary nerve. That could go in your drawing. It's just not going in mine. Anterior circumflex humeral. Around the anterior aspect of the surgical neck of the humerus. I know it's not right on it. Just give me a break. These guys connect and form collateral circulation and supply the humerus with some blood. But the deltoid and all the things around here, one thing you should know about arteries is that they are very, very generous. Arteries will give blood to anything they go by. They're like, you want some blood? Here's some blood. You want some blood? Here's some blood. So you're going to have all that variation because as you're developing, as you are living, you are making new blood vessels. And those arteries are going to branch to things that need blood because they're generous. That is the opposite of nerves. Nerves are very straight-laced. They are literally quite straight structures, bundles of neurons, and they're going to branch in these small little V's, and that's it. And they're only going to go to the things they're supposed to go to because they follow the letter of the law, whereas arteries are very relaxed. Arteries are like the hippies of the body, I guess, and nerves are like type A's, the med students. So, posterior circumflex, anterior circumflex, circumflexing around the surgical neck of the humerus. Where? Around the surgical neck of the humerus. Posterior circumflex humeral is with axillary nerve, not artery. It came from axillary artery. It's running with axillary nerve to the deltoid, teres minor, and anterior circumflex humeral is going to meet up with it. Those are all the branches of your axillary artery. Then axillary leaves the axilla, changes name, moves to a new state, brachial artery. And brachial artery will continue to branch in a different lecture. I said I would show you can do it with arrows, and I'm gonna. Draw your axillary boundaries, clavicle and arm, label everything, pec minor as a guide. First portion, one branch to the most importantly, the first and second intercostal muscles. Second portion, first branch to the serratus anterior muscle, that's lateral thoracic artery. Thoracoacromial trunk with its 4 branches, CAPD. Third portion, subscapular trunk with circumflex scapular artery, thoracodorsal artery. Out laterally, the posterior and anterior circumflex humeral arteries. And you're done. Now draw it again from memory. See what you know, see what you don't know, so you can be honest with yourself and get better. You got this. Thanks for watching. We apologize for the blurry camera, and we have fixed the issue, so the next time it'll be crystal clear. Next up, a short clip on the scapular anastomosis, the reason why we care about the circumflex scapular artery in the first place. See you soon!